Being an entrepreneur is lonely, and many people don't get you. That is not good for your mental health. How do you take care of it? Well, today I have Mark Fujiwara, who's the Epic Fit co-founder, Ikigai Court founder, and Pick My Brain investor. Ikigai Court is a charitable organization supporting mental well-being of all entrepreneurs from startup to exit, the most lonely and misunderstood people in the world. Some of you, great listeners and followers, will remember, Mark, we really broached a topic about mental health in the first season. And honestly, I didn't think mental health would be one of my main focus points on this podcast. And it had a lot to do with you, Mark, having that conversation. So thanks again for joining us on the podcast.
It's an honor to be here, Andre. Absolute honor. Always enjoy our time, my friend.
Yeah. So today I wanted to talk to you because we've had a lot of chats over the years about our mental health and how we can help others. And you were curious on what I've been going through lately, and I figured let's bring this conversation and record it. So for some of the listeners by now, you've heard that my engineering partner decided to leave. I had to buy him out shortly after all staff left. So I had left with nothing, and I decided to pursue and continue it while derailing some of my passion projects like tactical breakthroughs and that. But that came at a heavy taxing toll. Like that was a personal betrayal by three people. That's what I felt. And then complete abandonment, which is a lot of old triggers. But how can I move forward? I made the decision to make objective engineering work and to get back to my original goal of becoming an engineer's resource and getting back to my core roots of why I wanted engineering to do. And the process of that has been very taxing and challenging. And the one thing you pointed out, Mark, is I was maintaining my mental health was very important to me. And I was keeping that in check, and I didn't realize I did. So this is your interview, actually, my friend. And what else do you need to know from me on this? Because I thought we need to share this, that it wasn't easy and it's okay.
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be on the other side. And I feel like I've gone through some similar things. And I've also had some friends go through some similar things and responded in such a way that you and I would respond.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, first of all, I want to ask you, let's kind of take a baseline here. In terms of day to day, why don't you? I know a lot of your listeners know this, but I want to start from this. What's an average day in terms of your mental health?
An average day.
Yeah. So, do you suffer from? Do you have to deal with anxiety on a daily basis? Do you have moments where you feel like? So I'll
Right.
just tell you
Yeah.
mine. Yeah, I'm anxious on certain things. I get around certain people, and I feel anxious and depressed, and sometimes angry. So that's my typical day, but nothing
Right.
that spirals out of control. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah. Like for mine, it's very, I touched on this a while ago on a short where it's a more, it's kind of like a toned down bipolar, manic, depressive.
Uh huh.
The ADHD brain is not necessarily, we get into depressive modes away. It's like a wave. We get into these
Yeah.
depressive moods, but they're usually triggered. Those moods don't control, like they don't decide when to be a depression. Usually it's triggered on something, and then having the anxiety or the intensity of what's going on going there. But having the depressive cycles, the high anxiety, low anxiety, that can really impedes my emotional dysregulation. So if I really let that go, my emotional dysregulation would definitely get out of hand. And usually what that means, I'm a fighter. So that means someone else is going to suffer.
Mm.
And that was, I was very cognizant of that. I could have been head down, ass up and just work 14, 16 hours a day, every day. But I knew it would be at other people's cost. And I didn't want to do that because of what I know about my brain and my past and the trauma and how you're not productive when you're that way. You don't build a team up effectively doing that.
The anger, the depression.
Yeah.
Um, I've been there. It's somewhat. I know exactly. I know pretty much what you're talking about when you say it's not productive for other people, because it's almost like it's not about the anger. It's about the energy you bring to your team and to your family. That's kind of.
Right.
And I want to go to. You left me a video on your birthday.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And that's when a lot of this stuff was kind of unraveling. And
Mhm.
why don't we talk about that? Because you mentioned something here where your depressive moods are triggered, and depressive moods are triggered, and the severity of the depression depends on what is that trigger. So I felt like in that moment, Andre, the trigger was pretty big.
Yeah.
Um, why don't we talk a bit about that, and more along the lines of not like what was really going on, but how you were responding to it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like with the ADHD brain, we have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So, and
Yeah.
a complete fear of being rejected. And that's not necessarily a real rejection, it could be perceived
Mm-hmm.
internally and externally. So, what happened with that partner deciding to go, how he went, decided to go, that was a personal betrayal and abandonment. Actually, it was a true abandonment. And that's a massive traumatic trigger for me where I had to check myself and say, hey, man, you know what? He didn't abandon me. Yes, you can argue he did, but he had to do it for his own personal reasons. His mental health was affected. So he wasn't abandoning me. He was taking care of himself. But that little Andre was still out there trying to protect me of potential stuff down the road. And when I had to remind myself, you're safe, you're good. At the time, I still had a team, two team members, right?
Yeah.
Then 2 weeks later, gone. 2 weeks after that, gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to stop and check to make sure that yes, those were rejections, those were abandonments, but in the end, if I'm making it personal to me, someone told me that that now becomes about me, and now you can get a depressive cycle. So yes, that hit me hard. That's the trigger. I got to a depressive. I'm using the term depressive on purpose so it doesn't get mixed up with depression because
Right.
Chuck Englefield was saying depression, the mood chooses you. You don't choose the mood. And so when we're in these depressive trigger modes, it after a day or two, usually we can roll out of it or even hours, right? That's
Yeah.
why I kind of say it's a wave.
Yep.
But I could have really gotten trapped in those depressive moods. And yes, I touched into the victim mindset. I was pissed off at the world. I was pissed off at everyone. But in the end, I had a decision to make. Do I continue or not? And the only way I can get out of that is by working hard to understand like it happened. That's the fact. You got abandoned again, but I
Mm-hmm.
am still safe. And this is working a lot with my therapist is I'm still safe. It's just now it's a new obstacle. And then right when I change it, how can I make this work, maintain as much as many clients as I can and build a new team as quickly as possible that my ADHD brain flared up. New challenge accepted. But I had to go through that phase. Like you can't avoid it, right?
Yeah.
This is one thing
Yeah.
I'm realizing with all this mental, with your depression, your anxiety, mine as well, or everyone I've been talking to, it's going to happen. It's just how long
Yeah.
do you stay in that zone and how you work it out. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And something you mentioned too, the ADH brain um, ruminates,
Yes.
and so I want to touch upon that because for me too, gosh, man, if it's a trigger that is fairly significant, or let me back up. If it's a trigger where I can blow it out of proportion, and
Mm-hmm.
the worst case scenario becomes major severity. Um, that will usually take me down for a while.
Right.
So I want to go back to that because I think this is key with the ADHD brain, which is yes, you're going to have to feel the feeling. I'm very much in favor of that. I know you are too.
Mhm.
But where I think you did I know you did a really good job here in terms of noticing that and noticing where it could go. I want you to go in a little bit more detail because you just created a recipe here, Andre. This is not the last trauma you're going to face.
No.
This is not the last potential severe trigger that's going to come about. So, why don't you go through some of the learning lessons you had going through this and what you did to prevent a trigger like I sometimes have that lasts for sometimes over the course of the whole week?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, the thing was I made a decision and a commitment of what to do next was to keep engineering. I did decision. Just let
Uh-huh.
it flounder, finish the existing commitments, take the cash and run, let go of the team or the
Right.
new team. The process of hiring was already started. Or do I pursue it and make something out of it? But when I think making that decision really solidified how I was going to get out of it. If I would have said, I don't know right now, I think that would have been very tougher to manage the depressive moods and or the anxiety, actually the emotional dysregulation, because I found this way I was a little more radar focused, laser focused on where I want to go, which helped me maintain that emotional control. The other thing I did do was I cannot do what I did in my 20s is work 20-hour days, 7 days a week and get everything done. I can't do that physically. In that way, I can't be present for the people that cares for me. Because honestly, over the last 6 years, the amount of respect I have for myself now is tremendous.
Mm.
And with that comes a lot more friendships, a lot better friendships, deeper relationship with my girls and my wife, because I'm actually liking myself and I'm not sacrificing myself anymore for everyone. So that helped me to say, I got to be home. I need downtime because if I don't have downtime to rejuvenate the mental energy, you're you're not creative anymore. You're burnt out and then you have no control. You get the anger, then everyone's pissed. Then you're pissed off at everyone, right? And then, so how do you deal with the day to day? And I didn't realize this, but I decided I looked at my list of projects because I was dumped. 80 projects was dumped on my desk over a 2-week period, all varying status completions, and the status of each project left by the outgoing team members all lied. They all completely lied, and I had to deal with it. So no matter what, I think as an entrepreneur, an 8-hour day is at least 12. I don't know. Like to me, I just become that's my norm. But I'm taking more days off, which helps the offset balance there. But what I ended up doing is like I ended up there's 3 types of customers that I need to decide how I'm going to tackle these. One is a customer that I need to keep because they're interesting and good customers, good projects. 2 is nice to keep, but okay if they're gone. And then the third was I really don't care. So if it was like 5 o'clock now at the end of the day, what needs to be done? Which customers has to be done? If it's number 1, I would stay a bit late. If it's number 2 or number 3, I would go home and not worry about it till the next day.
Wow, that's key right there.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I still stuck to working, try to not to work on weekends as much as I can. Like I wasn't 100% successful, but having that conscious decision to keep that as best as I can was key. And then I had to take a 4-day weekend because I knew I was starting to burn out. And the burnout, I think, is what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand is actually mental health related. That's a
mhm.
mental health problem is when you're starting to burn out, is your mental energy is depleted. You got nothing left to give. And I had another thing, but I forget now. It'll come back later.
Your your awareness of what's happening. I've known you for a bit, Andre, and I think you've really worked hard on this because like me, the solution out of something like this is what you touched upon. We'll just work these insane hours, give up sleep, right? And then it'll all work out. But one thing that I want to acknowledge and applaud you for is that you're actually taking free days, right? I
Yeah.
think, we both know Dan Sullivan really well, and we're in that mindset sometimes where,
Hmm.
like a lot of us high achieving entrepreneurs, it's like, yeah, I'll do everything you say, Dan, but that free day thing, yeah, I can't, right? I can't.
Yeah. For the
And
listener,
so,
free day is there's zero thinking of business, no email checking. It's a complete disconnect. So
no
you can rejuvenate.
podcast listening,
Yeah.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, so that was a big thing for you. It was and you mentioned the downtime,
Hmm.
intentional downtime and restoration. I think that's something key because I noticed this time around that you were super intentional about it. Taking that long walk that you did. Remember, you took
Yeah.
that long walk on your birthday?
Yeah.
That was impressive. So now, again, you're putting together this recipe, and I want to also acknowledge something too, is the fact that you're categorizing. You have a system, which is ADHD brain, engineering brain, kind of go hand in hand sometimes with, all right, what if this then that, if this then that, right? So if it's need to keep, I'll stay late. Anything else, I'm going home.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you that because for me, that's really hard sometimes. But what pushed you? Like, was it the severity of what was happening right here? So what really, because you did some big work on this.
Yeah.
What got you to this point where I mean, you're doing a lot of intentional stuff right here.
It's intentional. I mean, it's a lot of the therapy that I've had in the past, understanding that little Andre was there to protect me and he was in control a lot of times. And it's that awareness of the behaviors I was having. Those behaviors is my brain who set up these mechanisms to protect me, but from shit from childhood. It's just my
Right.
brain kept that system. And either for a long time, I kept putting myself in those environments to maintain that system. And now we're at a point where I don't need the mechanism, but that your brain just knows what to do and it becomes instinctual. And
Yeah.
once that came out that, hey, you're safe, you don't need these mechanisms anymore. Now it's a conversation with your brain to say, no, like this was like, no, everything's fine. Everything's safe. It feels crappy. What happened? I got abandoned again, but I still have a company. I still have cash. I can move forward. I got customers. So now I'm still safe, but how long I dwell in that negativity is up to me. Like we all fall in the victim mindset. That's that everyone falls into it. But to me, it was that period, instead of spending months or years as a victim of that incident, I spent maybe a weekend. Either I do or die. And I just went forward. So the other point too, I think that was the other point I wanted to bring out with those rules I had. On my birthday, I just want to give context here.
Mhm.
On my birthday, I decided I had to go back to Lake Huron. This is where I was raised, and that lake speaks to me and calms me. And I took off at 8 o'clock in the morning and I drove. It's a 4-hour drive. And I had to tell my family who had things planned on my birthday for me that I needed to take this break because it was probably a good 2 solid months of head down, ass up. And I needed a reset.
Mhm.
And I needed to be alone to clear my head. And driving for me does that.
Mm.
Going to the lake completely, like, yeah, I took a 2-hour walk on the shore of the Lake Huron, but I also sat in my truck reading, listening in the rain, listening to the waves come in for another 2 hours. So I was 4.5 hours just parked on the side of the lake. Did I feel bad I left my family who had plans for me on my birthday? Yes. But I needed this, and I communicated that to my family. It has nothing to do with you guys. It's not that I don't want to be around you. I needed this reset, and it just coincided that on my birthday, I had the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I left at 7:30 actually in the morning, and I came back at 9 at night. Then I got my presents, but the girls understood that I needed, and they saw a difference in me when I came back. I was reset now to tackle the next 2 months until today, right? So this is where because my wife kind of mentioned something. I said, well, that's the problem with birthdays and weddings and Christmas. It's always about the other person, not the person that the event is for.
Yeah.
We all had something planned. We feel, my wife didn't accuse me of this, but I know like with weddings or other birthdays, no, we planned this for you. Therefore, you're making us feel bad because you're not here. Well, it's my birthday. Like, and then people make it about themselves. But in this case, you got to be selfish because this was self-protection. Because if I didn't have that day, I don't know where it would have been not good. I just knew that. And it was a tough step to take, but I'm glad I did it. And my family did notice a difference when I came back that 14 hours later.
Wow. I feel the it's funny because you mentioned something, and I think you feel the same way. Um, I don't know. It's been so long since I actually enjoyed a birthday because I get anxious on my birthday.
Yeah.
It's almost like I just want to hide. And I think your 14-hour getaway is so impressive, because it takes guts to do that. I also feel too that you did something different here. When you're faced with this trigger, you're faced with this trauma. You did something a bit different because the awareness was at its peak. But you did something here where I feel there's that moment, Andre. I feel like when you get triggered, there's that crucial moment where you can go down the path that you usually go down, or that I usually go down, which is just like sitting here, ruminating, and it gets harder and harder to get out of the hole.
Yeah.
And then, I don't show up for my family for quite a while. And then there's that point where it's just like, okay, you do the opposite. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but this was what was happening. Awareness that this is a crucial time, right? You can go this way and feel sorry for yourself and play the victim, or you can take action in terms of doing something different. And usually action comes in different forms. You discussed it in terms of, okay, realizing what you have with your business. And then I felt a lot of gratitude that came up instead of feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
The other taking action was a couple things. Was you being very intentional, not just saying I'm going to go for a walk for an hour, but 14 hours away on your birthday. So it was massive action that you took. There was also action in how you approached your business, and realizing this could lead to potential burnout, which is having the 3 types of customers.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like it was everything was intentional. So I can almost picture you in this moment, right? And you're looking at both sides here, and I can almost see you just getting up, changing your state, and you're on this path. And it's something I want to point out, just because now you and all your listeners have this plan, this way of going the other way in that moment. And once you agree, the sooner you do that, the easier it is. Because if you waited and played the victim for a whole day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
You're not getting out of that hole anytime soon.
No, you're digging
right?
a bigger hole.
So crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the big difference was I made a specific decision in a direction and not see, I kind of want to go this way. Like, I think the intentionality was the specific direction I wanted to see at the end. I think that helped because all the decisions after that was a lot easier to go into. Now, how many bouts of depression and anxiety did I go in a day every day? Wow. Sometimes I couldn't count it, but
Yeah.
it's also with the work that we've done. And that's why I like therapy and then talking to people like you. We're all in this, like, especially talking to people like you've, like I wrote down here, you all know and understand. I can reach out because you know and understand what's going on. And when you talk to people who know and understand this, they validate it, and then you can work things out, and you actually gain a lot more self-respect about yourself. When you start liking yourself, the world is a lot brighter and a lot greener. And since I like if this happened 5 years ago, my God, I don't even want to imagine where I'd be right now or how unpleasant I would be. But with all the work that I've done and self-confidence and liking myself, I said, I don't want to go down this road because that person I did not like. That was
Yeah.
not a moral failure. That was just mental health conditions not taken care of, undiagnosed ADHD, some ingrained habits from your far, far past that you haven't resolved internally. And that's key, I think, with a lot of the mental health. It's all about internal resolution, right? You got to look inside and deal with that pain and be honest and true. And that's what I've been, is very honest and true. And I did not want to go down that path. And I knew that was my one goal, but also the direction where I want to go with the engineering while maintaining my building of tactical. That helped me make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. Hey, Andre, the impulsive thinker here. This is the end of part 1 of my conversation with Mark Fujiwara. Stay tuned for part 2 coming out later this week, where we dive deeper into overcoming mental health challenges that ADHD entrepreneurs face.